February 1st, 1967, the 5 bands of note that had come out of the Haight to that point posed for a picture in front of the Grateful Dead house, soaking in each other's successes. Life was paradise, and paradise was the Haight.
We really, for a moment there, were rock gods. We were paid extremely well, idolized, immortalized, and you know, it's something that you don't know how you're going to handle something like that. You really don't.
Because you were in a band, you never had to pay for anything. You got all free drugs, free boot. You know what I mean? Anything you wanted was yours. It was like you were king or something. It was way over the top, much more than it should have been.
LSD was a driving force of that emotional high, and the residents of the Haight embraced its mind-expanding possibilities.
Well, LSD is a very powerful drug that alters an area in the brain, a serotonin receptor that codes incoming sensory input. It produces visual alterations, not true hallucinations, but visual alterations, so that you can see the air, the walls move, the walls breathe. And then you interpret that based on set and setting.
Psychedelics were a huge watershed event. You couldn't understand the graphics of the posters. You couldn't understand the lyrics. You couldn't understand the style of what was going on unless you'd had one of these mind-expanding trips and you realized the kind of magical nature of things, the mystery behind the existence of the smallest speck of dust, and the interpenetration of inline and outline. If you didn't have that experience, everything was just a style.
What it was like everybody was, psychedelics set everybody free and woke a lot of people up totally.
The effects of the drug, with an altered perception of the senses, emotions, and awareness, was just the gateway that the new generation of explorers was searching for.
It was the beginning of the end of the old ways and the beginning of new ways, There were some problems with it, of course, as we all discovered, that some people did take drugs and die, and go crazy.
That stuff will give you a lot of power, and what goes up must come down. So as high as you think you might get, you're going to come down here, and then you're going to be humble and say, whoa, wait a minute, I got to think that over. And so on the middle ground, you just start being more respectful of people. And, if you can get that far and have we were lucky in those days, Owsley made some pretty good stuff.
For those who used LSD, it was considered to be something more than just a drug. Its use took on the aura of self-discovery.
Just life itself, it was a very introspective, looking deep inside, trying to, pretentious as that may sound now, we were young, but it was an experiment. It's one big experiment.
To me, the psychedelic influence of that time really allowed people to see that whatever paradigm they're living in isn't the only one. There's another way to look at something. There's always some other way to look at whatever is going on.
We were not dropping acid and tripping at the mall. We were really trying to understand something about the way the universe worked and then apply that to the world to make it better and fairer and more just for a lot more people. And I think that sometimes gets short shift.
Summer had officially arrived, and Scott McKenzie's song San Francisco broke the top 10 the same week. The hit played like a siren song to the lost youth who were coming to San Francisco in droves without money, food, or a place to stay.
To some degree, San Francisco has a place in the imagination, offers that hope to people all over the country, very similar to how America offers that hope to the rest of the world. And you can almost build the pyramid to the next level, and then it's the Haight. So if you were to build a pyramid, I mean, and I'm daring this, to some extent, I'm projecting it out there, it's the Haight, San Francisco, United States, and the rest of the world. And that's why a lot of people will claim the Haight is the center of the world.
It actually drew all these really sensitive, intuitive type of people from all over. It was like a convention of sensitive people. And we felt like what we were sensitive to, we were all feeling this thing that was happening. And people would come like hopeless drunks that, would come and they would just be uplifted, at least momentarily anyway.
To be alive then was great, but to be young was pure heaven. And that describes how I feel about that, because it was an intuitive kind of magic time when something was going on, but nobody knew what it was.
It was exciting. Not only was it exciting to America, but it was exciting to the entire middle-class world.
Because everybody knew about the Summer of Love. I can remember, while it was going on, it was called the Summer of Love. So who planned this anyway? I never did find that out.
The Haight Ashbury community has created the Council for a Summer of Love in San Francisco. Within the Haight Ashbury population, there are many strata of imaginative and creative energies whose spirit extends throughout San Francisco and the world.
The council was formed in an effort to bring order to the growing chaos. Even if they were inclined, city officials were ill-equipped to deal with such numbers converging on the Haight. There was no stopping this pilgrimage.
I look at it as like the ancient city of Alexandria, where people from all over the world were heading, and all at the same time, different cultures, and boom, as soon as they got there, they went, we ain't leaving, because this place is happening,
It was overloaded because people poured in to the Haight Ashbury neighborhood and to San Francisco, and they couldn't handle it. There was really no place for them to be.
There were all these kids coming out here from Nebraska and Illinois and Iowa and Tennessee. And the media was full of pictures of the Haight Ashbury, and they would see pictures of these kids sitting on doorsteps, looking for the cops and smoking a joint. It didn't matter what the caption you put underneath was. The kids saw that picture and they were gone. They were out there. And the city fathers were mouthing, and nobody was lifting a finger.
And then it exploded into the consciousness of the youth of America, and they wanted to come here and experience it. So there was this just chemical reaction, this explosion.
The city of San Francisco has been warned of a hippie invasion come summer in numbers almost too staggering to comprehend.
Time magazine's cover story on the hippies in the first week of July depicted the peaceful panhandle primitives as hollow-cheeked flower children who were disciples of the cult of hippiedom, describing the scene as a Shangri-La a-go-go.
But all of a sudden, San Francisco turns into like the mecca for every kid in the country to run away from home, because in the press you look at it and they paint you this, Wizard of Oz kind of land where everything grows on trees and everybody gets stoned and you can screw as much as you want to and paint your face up and you don't have to grow up and you don't have to have money. You can always just beg money, and that's cool. And whatever you want to do is okay. So it was just flooded with people.
And what the media told a lot of these kids, or what impression they gave to these young people, was all the negative aspects of the hip scene that we were having. And how do you tell someone what is hip? When you start telling somebody it's hip, it's not. It just becomes, like, oops, the cat got out of the bag, and you know what's groovy and what's hip, you know, you don't have to tell anybody. Well, the newspapers tried to, and they did a lousy job of it.
The hippies seem to be a new way of life. That's their right. But they have no right to inflict their way of life on everybody else to the detriment and the exclusion of people continuing their way. And when they block the streets, then it is interference with the normal, routine life of a community. It will be stopped.
With the city making it clear to the Haight that they were on their own, one group was determined to help. They were activist theater performers, expanding on the definition of performance. They called themselves the Diggers.
The Diggers were actually the cutting edge, the farthest push on the implications of what a counterculture could be. And for taking it out as far as we did, we received a lot of respect. We did everything for no money. We did everything anonymously because we felt that if you were getting famous, that wasn't free.
The streets of the Haight would be the Diggers' stage, a stage without boundaries. Their first performance of street theater was offering free food in the Panhandle.
We're trying to start a pilot program here. It's called a Digger Feed-In. You go home, you cook whatever you can cook at your kitchen, and you bring it out and you serve it to hungry people on the street, you know?
The Diggers were just one group that helped some of these people, and they did it in a different sort of way than some of the religious groups.
And the only thing we required was that to get the food, you step through a yellow frame made out of 2x4s, about 6 feet by 6 feet, and it was called the free frame of reference. And when you stepped on the other side, we gave you a little one about this big on a shoestring. It's called the free frame of reference. And we just invited you to look at the world as if it was free.
The crowds finally began to thin in the waning days of summer. Those who remained still had yet to figure out what just happened, but many knew what the next step had to be, a spiritual cleansing of the neighborhood, of the emblem of what had gone wrong in the experiment, the hippie. Mourners gathered at dawn for a somber funeral procession down Haight Street.
When I heard about the ceremonial funeral of the death of the hippie, my first thought was, it's about time. Your idea of what we're about is superficial. It really is not touching the basis. It's not catching the substance. And by doing this ceremonial funeral, it was like a rite of exorcism as much as anything else.
If you have a big parade in the street and everybody's carrying a coffin that says hippie, son of media, and it has dollar signs all over it, and everybody's playing penny whistles and holding up mirrors to the people in the crowd so that all you see is yourself when you look at it, anybody who reported that incident in the press, all they have to do is describe it. And anybody who's awake anywhere in the United States will read it and go, I get it. I know what's going on. I know what they're trying to say.
The hope was that by burying this media invention, the neighborhood could return to the core beliefs of the movement. But it was too late. Too much had happened. It was all over.
Come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody get together, try to love one another right now.
While the moment had passed for the Haight, the movement was still gaining steam in other parts of the country, culminating in 3 days of peace and music in upstate New York.
If Time magazine calls it the greatest peaceful event in the recorded history of all mankind, we're talking it was needed, you know?
Even at 3,000 miles away, Woodstock had a strong Haight flavor. 1/3 of the performing bands had San Francisco ties.
Well, for me personally, it was a complete change from feeling like I wasn't a part of what was happening to being a part of something that was happening.
Woodstock created the West Coast sound because when we made the deal with Bill Graham to bring his acts, that was it. And it so happened they happened to be great acts. And they hadn't really been, you know, just playing San Francisco, just didn't do it. Cisco, LA, back and forth, you know, so it took them Nashville, and then Woodstock opened the door wide open, you know, gave them longevity and long careers, and they made great music.
When I went to Woodstock, I thought, yeah, I really belong here. And everybody here that's here is really a friend of mine, you know? We're really having a good time. And there's a lot of us, you know? And nobody's gonna fuck with us because there's so many of us.
The happening fed the hippie mystique, showing that 500,000 of them can get together in nonviolence.
I think that was a real watershed moment, and that they were there not for any particular political reason, but that they were part of something that was a societal change. And I think that signified a major shift in American cultural, political, social landscaping that people could not deny. And that has probably survived to this day.
All the stuff that Woodstock is now completely normal. There's other things that people are shocked about now.
While Woodstock showcased the hippie community at its best, the discarded Haight Ashbury neighborhood descended to a darker side.
But you know, walking down the street in '68 was a scary proposition. It was not. You can tell it was gone. It was.
Kids kept flooding here, no matter what. They just kept coming, and then big city people came with dangerous drugs. This place was totally devoid of anybody with a name. By 1968, they were gone.
The scene got so bad in '69, where we were living, like I said, a half a block off of Haight Street. My wife got held up at knife point, and we said, "Fuck this, we're moving out. You know, we can't live here anymore."
An evolution away from the mind expansion of LSD led to the introduction of harder, more aggressive drugs like speed. By decade's end, the Haight was under siege with a full-blown heroin epidemic.
But the